She showed up every day in overalls, welding torch in hand, pulling stuck Jeeps out of Utah Canyon walls for 1 million subscribers, while quietly winning rodeo belt buckles on weekends and counting down the days until she could leave it all behind. That woman was Lizzy Stout, the most recognizable face on Matt's off-road recovery, and the most misunderstood one. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly who she was before the camera ever found her, and why what she chose to do next made complete sense to everyone except the fans who thought they already knew her. Matt's off-road recovery launched on March 28, 2019, and by almost any metric it shouldn't have worked. No dramatic hosts, no extreme sports, no algorithm baiting stunts. Just a soft-spoken towing company owner from Hurricane, Utah named Matt Wetzel pulling tourist vehicles out of the desert with a modified Jeep XJ painted yellow and nicknamed the Banana. It worked anyway. Within 3 years, the channel crossed 1.5 million subscribers and logged over 630 million views. The content was unglamorous by design. Real stranded people, real equipment failures, real southern Utah terrain chewing through axles and differentials, while Matt and his crew improvised solutions under sun that didn't let up. What the audience didn't expect was to care as much about the people doing the recovering as the vehicles being recovered. Matt's family appeared regularly. His wife Jamie, who handled the billing side of his towing company Winder Towing, and a rotating cast of crew members, friends, and employees who all carried their own weight on camera. The channel had an authenticity problem that most YouTube channels would envy. It was too real to fake. Then in 2020, a new face joined the team. Young, confident, mechanically fluent, quick with a welder and quicker with a comeback. Lizzy Stout walked into the shop and almost immediately became the most talked about member of the crew. Viewers had questions, lots of them. And the biggest one wasn't about off-road recovery at all. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. The moment new viewers found Matt's off-road recovery, they asked the same question in the comments. Is Lizzy Matt's daughter? The answer was no, but the real answer was more layered than that. Lizzy's father is Stuart Stout, and Stuart and Matt Wetzel grew up together in southern Utah, childhood friends who stayed close into adulthood. The Stout family and the Wetzel family had known each other for more than one generation. When Lizzy started working at the shop in 2020, she wasn't walking into a professional environment as a new hire. She was walking into a workspace run by a man who had known her since she was a child, whose family had shared decades of history with her own. Matt treated Lizzy the way any mentor figure in that situation would, with patience, with directness, and with the kind of accountability you only extend to someone you actually care about. There is a clip on the channel where Matt is teaching Lizzy the correct technique for using kinetic recovery ropes. He stops mid-lesson and says directly to her, "Sorry, I didn't give you good instructions." That sentence, from a man known for being blunt and practical, said everything about how he viewed her place on the team. Lizzy herself cleared up the confusion in April 2022. She posted a photo on Instagram standing between Stuart and Matt. With text labels she added herself, "My dad," over Stuart's head, and "Not my dad" over Matt's, with a hashtag reading, "Dads are the best." The post ended the speculation without drama, but it also confirmed what regular viewers had sensed. The relationship between Matt and Lizzy operated on a level of trust that went beyond a standard employer and employee. She wasn't blood, she wasn't just staff. She was something the channel had never quite explained clearly. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. What the channel showed was a young woman who could weld, operate a winch, read terrain, and handle herself in remote conditions that most people wouldn't put themselves in voluntarily. That was real. None of it was performance. What the channel didn't show was the other side of who Lizzy Stout actually was when she clocked out. Lizzy competed in rodeo. She rode horses with the kind of fluency that doesn't come from occasional weekend visits. It comes from years of practice and a genuine attachment to working livestock. She played volleyball competitively. She swing danced, and the detail that mattered most, the one that was hiding in plain sight, was the belt buckle she wore to work. Ornate, engraved, the kind of hardware that gets handed to you in an arena in front of a crowd. Lizzy had won it in a rodeo competition. She wore a rodeo trophy to the job every day. It was on camera constantly. For a certain portion of the audience, it didn't register as anything more than a personal accessory. For anyone who understood what a rodeo belt buckle means, where it comes from, what it costs to earn, it was a signal. Lizzy Stout was not someone who stumbled into the outdoor world through a towing company. She was someone who had been living inside that world her entire life, long before a YouTube channel ever pointed a camera at her. The welding, the vehicle recovery, the early mornings in the desert, all of it slotted naturally into a person whose baseline comfort level with physical, land-based work was already well above average. The audience thought they were watching someone learn an unusual job. They were actually watching someone add a new skill set to a life already built around the land. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. In mid-2022, news filtered out through Lizzie's social media that she had become engaged. The man was Clancy Ballard, a fellow member of the LDS Church, an avid horse rider, and someone whose face was almost entirely absent from public record. When Clancy appeared in a handful of Meoar videos, his face was either blurred or he went unintroduced. He chose privacy deliberately, and Lizzie respected that. They married on September 30, 2022, at Cedar City, Utah Temple. The reception was held in Hurricane, the town where Lizzie had grown up, the town where Matt's shop sat, the community that had shaped both of them. By every visible measure, it was the beginning of the next chapter. What followed was a chapter almost nobody tracked at the time. Clancy, as an active LDS member, was on a religious mission. That mission took him to Dixon, Tennessee, roughly 1,700 miles from Hurricane, Utah. The timeline, pieced together from his social media activity, put him on that mission for months spanning late 2022 and into early 2023, which meant that Lizzie, newly married, continued showing up at the Meoar shop in Hurricane and filming videos for a channel with over 1 million subscribers, while her husband was in a different state entirely. She kept that part of her life almost entirely to herself. No public commentary about the distance, no channel content addressing it. She showed up, did the work, and kept the personal separate from the professional, with a discipline that most people twice her age couldn't manage. Regular viewers never knew the marriage was happening largely off-screen. They saw a young woman who looked settled and committed to the job. The reality underneath that image was considerably more complicated. She never talked about this publicly, until now. There is a specific moment from a Meoar video that Matt Wetzel has since spoken about at length, not because of what happened during a recovery, but because of what the data told him afterward. The crew was driving through Vail, Utah, on the way to a job. They stopped at a gas station. Lizzie bought nachos. The conversation that followed was entirely ordinary, 7 to 12 seconds of two people talking about gas station food while driving toward work. Viewer retention on that video, days after upload, was sitting at 82%. Matt later stood in front of an audience at Vid Summit, an industry conference for YouTube creators and content strategists, and used this moment as the centerpiece of a presentation. He called it the nacho moment. He explained that retention typically drops as a video runs longer. The industry benchmark that creators celebrate clearing is around 46%. 82%, sustained days after release, is the kind of number that doesn't happen through production value or scripting. It happens when an audience is genuinely connected to a person they're watching. What the data was measuring, though Matt framed it in terms of content strategy, was something simpler. People liked Lizzie, not just as a crew member, as a person they felt they knew. That 7 to 12 second nacho clip, in a video that cost Matt nothing to capture, outperformed produced content that took hours to set up. The audience had voted with their attention. They wanted more of her, in exactly the unguarded, unscripted moments she probably thought weren't worth filming. The irony was that the version of Lizzie the audience was most attached to, the spontaneous, unguarded one, was the version she was keeping mostly private. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. In early 2023, Lizzie told the channel she was pulling back to part-time hours. The stated reason was straightforward. She wanted to spend more time with Clancy and help out on his family's ranch in Kane County, Utah. The ranch required actual labor, cattle to care for, land to manage, horses to work with, the kind of operation where you don't get to leave the job at 5 o'clock, and where someone who understood livestock and terrain would be an asset rather than an extra hand. The Meoar audience met this news with a range of reactions. Some were supportive, many were confused. The comments, as they do, speculated about what wasn't being said. Was there conflict? Had something happened between her and Matt? Was this actually her choice? The record on this is clear. Lizzie left on good terms. Matt confirmed it. The Wikitubia documentation of the channel, which tracks Meoar's history in detail, records the departure plainly. She left in late July 2023 because her passion was ranching, not vehicle fabrication. The two were not at odds over it. What sealed the goodbye, and what the comments seemed to miss entirely, was the send-off itself. Matt bought Lizzie a truck, a black 12th-generation Ford F-150 FX4. Her dream had always been a green Ford Raptor. She'd mentioned it to the channel more than once. Matt bought her the F-150 instead, as a farewell gift, from a man who had known her father since childhood, and who had watched her grow from a teenager into a skilled mechanic and now into someone walking away toward a life that made sense for her. She drove away from Hurricane in a truck her mentor bought her, toward a ranch in Kane County, and the channel's comment sections immediately filled with one question: is she coming back? Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got. Until now. Lizzie said at the time of her departure that she would return to Amoria if the situation called for it. She has not appeared in a video since July 2023. Her Montreal Lizzie accounts, the Instagram with over 103,000 followers, the TikTok that had grown even larger, went largely quiet. The branding that had been tied entirely to the channel she was leaving became a kind of relic. She maintained a personal account under a separate handle, @Lizzie250_, which has gathered its own following, though on a smaller scale. The life she stepped into after Moria was not a pivot or an experiment. It was a return. Horse riding, cattle, open land in southern Utah. Kane County is one of the more remote and sparsely populated areas in the state, the kind of place where the work is physical and the pace is set by the land rather than an upload schedule. This was not a woman starting over. This was a woman arriving at where she had always been pointed. Meanwhile, Amoria continued producing content. The channel had already navigated multiple departures by that point, Rudy leaving in April 2022, Skeeter and Trevor going in late 2022, Tucker following shortly after. Each exit generated its own wave of comments and concern. Each time, Matt's response was the same. People have their own paths. The channel keeps going. Nobody was fired. What the pattern of departures revealed about Matt's operation is actually something worth pausing on. Winder Towing and Amoria were not designed as career destinations. They were designed as genuine workplaces, the kind where people came in, contributed fully, and eventually followed where their lives led them. Matt built something real enough that the people who worked there had real enough lives to want to pursue. Lizzie leaving was not a sign the channel was failing. It was, in a strange way, a sign that the culture Matt built was working exactly as intended. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. There is a detail about Lizzie Stout that rarely gets included in any coverage of her time at Amoria, and it reframes almost everything about how she showed up there. Lizzie and Clancy Ballard share a hobby. They collect longhorn heads and sell them. Not as decor, as a trade. It's a niche market built around understanding livestock, knowing quality, and maintaining the kind of contacts that come from being embedded in agricultural and ranching communities. It is not the side project of someone who decided to get into country life after finding a YouTube channel they liked. It is the activity of someone who grew up knowing the texture of that world. Put it all together, and the picture of who Lizzie Stout was at Amoria becomes clearer than the channel ever made it. She was a Washington County Farm Bureau member. She competed in rodeo. She married a man who went on a religious mission and came back to run a ranch. She wore her rodeo hardware to work every single day. She got good at welding and vehicle recovery because those skills are adjacent to the practical mechanical knowledge you need on a working operation, not because she chose a career in automotive fabrication. The audience thought they were watching a young woman find her place in a traditionally male-dominated space. And in one sense they were. She genuinely excelled there, and the skills she built at Amoria were real and hard-won. But the fuller truth is that Lizzie already had a place. She knew exactly where she was headed. Amoria was a chapter, not a destination. The double life she lived wasn't deceptive. It was simply too nuanced to fit in a thumbnail. Lizzie Stout was never hiding who she was. She was wearing the evidence of it on her belt every single day, right there in front of the cameras. What comes next for her is ranching in southern Utah alongside Clancy, building the life she chose over the one that had built her public profile. Whether she ever returns to more remains genuinely open. She said she would if the situation called for it. And the relationship with Matt Wetzel, rooted in something older than any YouTube channel, hasn't ended. It's simply evolved. Her personal account continues to post on her own timeline, without the upload pressure of a 1 million subscriber channel driving the schedule. The question worth sitting with is this. Lizzie had over 100,000 followers who thought they knew her, a channel built partly around her presence, and a send-off truck from a man who considered her family. and she walked away from all of it for a ranch in Kane County, Utah. Would you have made the same call? Or is that the kind of move only someone who knew exactly what they wanted could actually make?